Finding Our Way. And what you need to know about that title is I don't think we're lost. It's not finding our way like we don't know. It's finding our way, our horizon. You know, because the currents of society want to take us where it wants us to go. And so we need to become skillful navigators in order to find our way and get to where we want to go, is what we have learned. Now, there's so much. We're going to actually, the sum total of my message is we're kind of headed to the same place from really different directions. What you'll hear from me is an institution of people in a parallel universe, if you will. And I don't just mean north and south. I mean from the standpoint of what we've done over 125 years or so of being in existence, where we feel we need to go. And you, after your settlement in only, 10 years in existence as a trust organization, where you're headed. So it's something of a parallel universe, and we're going to kind of find our way together, and I'll kind of share with you where that is. But it occurred to me that in 40 minutes there's so much I would need to explain about Kamehameha and Hawaiian history and so forth that I hope you don't mind if we had some of these maybe put into your books to kind of dispatch with all that history and background stuff and have you peruse that at your leisure. And by all means, if you have any questions about that, please feel free to ask. But let's get on with this story. I was instructed by these young fellows who hesitate not a moment to tell their elders what to do. Have you found that to be true? He says, make sure you tell them Nainoa's point. Can you see the island? Before Nainoa launched on Hokulea in 1976 on her very first voyage, where he was the navigator, instrumentless navigation, using the stars, using the ways of our ancestors, he was tutored by Sadawali's Micronesian navigator, Mau Piailo, a treasure. And Mau used to take him to one of our lookout points on the island of Oahu before they launched that first voyage. And he'd go there and say, can you see the island? And Nainoa said, how ridiculous. Tahiti is well over the horizon. How could I possibly see the island? When he'd say that, they'd pack up in the car and go home. Eat this day after day till finally Nainoa got it. And if he couldn't envision that island that they were going to raise, he'd never get there. He had to see it in his mind's eye. And so a lot of this journey is about seeing our island and where that's off on that horizon. Next. So I'm going to tell you a story about our voyage of discovery in Kamehameha Schools, the Land Assets Division, and I stole this question from Joe Williams. I'm going to tell it around answering this question. Wide Ocean as courageous and brilliant navigators, and they raised our islands and they made landfall, but they probably weren't Hawaiian on arrival. They probably didn't see themselves as any different from the people who got on the canoe the minute they got off. So what happened? This week the earth lives. And that came through in their olelo noeau, their value statements. Next. They invented place names, as you did here. All these lands, it's not just mountains, it's names of places of significance. And we structured our land division according to an ahupua'a, from the heavens to the horizon, and recognized that there were places in Bauakua, and we recognized the resources of those places, and that man didn't need or shouldn't be in all those places. There was a place for man, and there's a place for man to malama and care for in other places. Recognized that they needed to adapt their behavior to the cycles of that land. Next. A genealogical connection developed. Generations passed, came and passed, came and passed. And we canoed the iwi of our ancestors. You know, when we say, you'll hear us all the time, iwi, in our speech with you, because iwi is bone. We have 350,000 acres. Let's go through the process of growing the regions. The center strong. Let's put out that investment capital into the region so we can grow a tribal economy at the regional level, where our people are participating in that process, and thereby transform our own well-being and the well-being of our environment. Next. And so we have new education strategies, and we learned a lot from you about this one, about learning through culture, not just about ourselves. I mean, the evolution I've seen is culture was punished. If you spoke the language in school, you got slapped. You got punished. Then we went to that phase where we learned a little bit about ourselves, as if we were somebody else, as if it was a third person, And then we went to the phase where we said, wait, this is not acceptable. Not only do we don't only want to know about our culture, we want to learn through our culture. in Mahina's work at Heya Fish Pond, where they took and really, when you go there, the process of managing that pond, the health of the water, the condition of the kuapa, the wall system, and so forth, is all imbued with science and math and language arts, cultural information about place names, cultural practices, taking an asset that when I used to have a sole proprietor there, we used to have to chase her for the $100 a month rent for the caretaker shack. We always had a participation on crop, seaweed and limu and fish that were sold. Nothing from that. Now I think they were up to 3,000 children going to help take care of this taonga every year and learning through that process. That's a great highest and best use of an asset to me. Next. And we've changed our asset management strategy to where it's not just about economic maximization, we want it all. We want to redefine wealth. We want a balance of economic, educational, cultural, and environmental returns, and we want to put our people in the middle of the equation for creating that wealth. We call it, transliteration, kala, a dollar is kala. It's a migration from kala to vai, true wealth, spiritual, cultural wealth. Next. And so our land asset managers, people like Mawai and Esther, who's here with us from our staff, really gone out and said, how do you apply this? And Esther will give you an example of that in her talk tomorrow. How do you take this theory and the strategy and bring it down to the ground? And for our ag lands, it's about not just sitting back and leasing it to any old buddy, but saying, how do we create a plan that starts to deploy these lands for our food and fuel security and let our people participate in that process. Next. How do you take our aina vai and have them be healthy in terms of the ecosystem services, the cultural resources that are there, the natural resources, the watersheds, the riparian ways, the wetlands, and how do you make those healthy so that our society functions properly, our environment functions properly. Next. And how do you expand those programs like Mahina's used to have so that our students, our young people, are rediscovering the ancestral etchings on our lands, and our lands become aina ulu. Aina is land, that which nourishes us. Ulu is to grow. And what we find is when we grow the land, that very activity grows us.